CNN Breaking News.
And as Chris was just saying it seems so because we do have breaking news. President Trump, in an interview with Fox News just now, and I believe the interview is still happening, said the following: "I think with a high degree of certainty, we have him." Let's get straight back to Nick Watt in Utah on the ground. He was headed to go to this press conference. So, Nick, we now hear this from President Trump.
Right. So let's take that for what it is. We have not heard any more information here yet on the ground to confirm or add any more detail yet to what the president has just said. But listen, as I said earlier, as we were just hearing, yesterday during the day, there were increments. Last night, all of that new information was released. Those enhanced, we were told, photographs showing that suspect, showing that distinctive clothing, showing him running off the roof. So perhaps that has helped in some way. Listen, the governor here in Utah did say they could not do their job without the public's help. There were huge appeals for the public's help. There was a $100,000 reward. We were told that they'd actually received about 7,000 tips from the public. So this, during the day yesterday, as they released more information, as they released more images, that perhaps is what picked up this investigation and led to what the president is saying is a person in custody. Now, remember, of course, the FBI Director Kash Patel came out very soon after the shooting to say that there was a suspect in custody. That had to be walked back. So we are still waiting for confirmation, for more detail to fill out the details behind what the president has just announced. Guys.
All right, stand by for one moment, Nick. Let's play what the president just said moments ago.
I think with a high degree of certainty, we have him in custody, right? In custody. I don't want to go too far. I'd like to tell you some stories at how it happened, but essentially somebody that was very close to him turned him in. And that happens when you had some of those good shots. Somebody is going to say, whether it's a parent or whatever, I'd rather not say right now. They're going to announce it today, sometime later, probably talk about that.
Nick Watt is on the ground for us in Utah, and we have Chris Sweckert is with us as well. Chris, if you're there, the information that President Trump just gave us, that someone very close to the suspect turned him in. Talk to us about that development right there, what that tells you.
Yeah, I mean, well, it speaks of maybe the $100,000 reward that's out there. That's a pretty good incentive to turn in somebody in. As I said earlier, the photos were of a good enough resolution that someone close to this shooter would be able to identify them off the photo. And I was shocked yesterday that he wasn't identified more quickly because, I mean, just the pervasiveness of social media and the mainstream media. And you'd have to really be hidden away to not have seen his photo out there. So it took a little while, but it appears that he's probably in custody. And it's not surprising or shocking that someone close to him actually turned him in.
I was going to ask that bit, Chris, that it is not surprising. It often it can often be that it's someone close to them sees it and decides, for whatever their motivation may be, when they see that person, then they make the call. Is that what you say is traditionally kind of more what happens in these big cases like this?
Yes. Yes, and $100,000 actually is a large amount for an FBI reward. You don't want a reward so high that you invite all the crazies to call in and all the opportunists to call in. And you just have to be very careful and circumspect about the amount of the reward and even putting out a reward at all, because it does draw in a lot of leads that are extraneous, and those have to be gone. You have to sift through all of that. But they were very deliberately withholding all of that information as of early yesterday, because you don't want, if you're on to somebody, you don't want to tip them off that you're on to them, and you want to have the element of surprise as you go through the investigation and manhunt. But they clearly hit a stumbling block after that 9 o'clock press conference, and within an hour or so, they had the photo out there. Again, it is surprising that it didn't happen sooner, but it could be that you know who the person is, but you don't know where they are. So that may have been the situation. A lot of information will come out at 9 a.m., but Kash Patel misspoke on Wednesday, which was, I thought, not appropriate, very inappropriate. But I don't think Donald Trump would misspeak today. He sounded very certain about what he was talking about.
And he's saying a lot more. I want to note here. He is saying that it was a minister involved with law enforcement who was involved in guiding law enforcement to the suspect, and also ultimately he said the father of the suspect got involved. Obviously, we'll get much more from other officials as this develops, but that's what the president is indicating so far. We'll keep listening in there. With us, joining us now also is Ed Davis, former Boston police commissioner. These moments, assuming that this is the person, what happens in these first moments when a suspect in a crime of this nature is taken into custody?
Good morning. Well, you know, a crime of such seriousness and high profile requires a really explicit attention to civil rights and constitutional rights. You know, we're thrilled that somebody may be held accountable for this, but what happens right now is critical. He is taken into custody. He has to be advised of his rights immediately under Miranda, so that any statements he makes will not be challenged. He'll be brought to a detention facility and booked, go through the normal process of name, address, things like that. They will fingerprint him, and hopefully, depending on the state, take DNA samples. The federal government will be able to do that. And clearly, every attention to detail is critical here right now for any officer or prosecutor that comes in contact with this individual.
Ed, please stick with us. Let's get over to Evan Perez. He's got some new reporting coming in about all of this breaking news. Evan, what are you picking up?
Well, Kate, you know, we've been watching this overnight because we'd heard hours ago that the law enforcement had taken into custody someone who they thought or had been reported to be to match the description of the shooter, that image that the FBI and that the Utah Department of Public Safety had put out last night that showed the image of the shooter. And so what happened in the overnight hours is the FBI and the local authorities there went and picked him up and have spent the last several hours interviewing him and trying to understand, make sure that they have the right person. Now, it's clear that President Trump is getting briefed by the investigators, and he believes that this is the right person. We've just been told that they had some pretty good information that this person could be the shooter, that this person matched the description of that person of interest that was circulated yesterday by law enforcement authorities. And so the work then began in the overnight hours to try to verify and confirm. They, of course, going to look at everything from DNA evidence. Some of that is still actually being done right now. They're waiting for to match him to some of the other things that they've gathered, some of the other evidence that they've gathered. But it appears, at least from what President Trump is now saying, that they have certainly gotten more comfortable that they believe they have the right person. Now, the caution here is that we've been here before. The FBI director wrongly tweeted that they had person arrested, the shooter arrested. He suggested that the shooter had been arrested, only to retract that. And so we're all being cautious here. Certainly we were all, once we heard this, wanted to make quadruple sure before we even told anybody about it, because of the very nature of this investigation. Obviously, it's a lot of pressure on these investigators to get the right person, but that work is still being done. The evidence is still being analyzed, and they're trying to make sure that they have the right person, and that work is still being done by those investigators in Utah.